It will extend beyond the spine of the Inverness to Perth. And the reason for that, and that's the reason why they're doing it, is also to join up two of Scotland's cities. But it's a major route, it's a major economic route. And if you think of all the traffic in timber and the traffic in whisky up and down that road, as well as the tourism, but also much of what we do around renewables in the future is going to be based in the north of Scotland. So you need to get the equipment up there to be able to create the turbines and the hydro schemes that we're all going to be dependent upon in the future. So the A9 is absolutely critical to that.
So are you also aware and familiar of the promises made by the Scottish Government? I think the first one was in 2007, it was repeated in 2009 and then again in 2011 to dual the A9 between Perth and Inverness. That's something that's, you know, part of, I don't know how long you've worked at Sika, but it's something that's been part of the fabric of Scotland's political discussion for a considerable period of time.
Yes, well, as civil engineering contractors, we are acutely aware of the promises that were made around that, because that's work for the sector, and we have always been looking forward to that work coming out on a regular basis. So when the promise was made, it was achievable at that time to be able to dual the A9, but in the time scale that they gave themselves. But they needed to have a plan, and they also needed to have the money there to be able to have a rolling program of bringing out sections of the A9 to be tendered for and then built. And that's the problem, is the promise was made and then not a lot of work was then done behind that to deliver on it, and it seems to have gotten put further down in the list of priorities of the government, I would suggest.
So what's fallen down then? Because obviously things have gone horribly wrong with the A9, and you've been fairly critical of Transport Scotland's contracts.
Yes, I think there's two things going on here. There's two streams. There is the dueling of the A9, which doesn't seem to be coming out. And there is all the other new road building that takes place in Scotland that has similarly slowed down. The work that has gone on, there has been a problem with contractors over the years, is that the terms and conditions given by Transport Scotland to contractors are not attractive. And in recent years, contractors have found it very difficult to make any money, if at all money. Civil engineering contractors work on margins of 2%. That is the industry norm for civil engineering contractors. So as you can well imagine, it doesn't take much to go wrong on a project to be able to lose a lot of money. And on big road building projects where lots of money are at stake, you can lose a lot of money very quickly too. And the main areas where the contractors have had issues with Transport Scotland is on risk. Now that's a contractual term, but in layman's terms, it's around who is responsible for some of the things that could go wrong on a job. And some of the things we're talking about risk are things like weather. And so if you're trying to build roads in the middle of nowhere in the north of Scotland, and during winter, then weather becomes a bit of a risk. So you can actually have to stop work. So who pays for all the plant and equipment that's on hire? So under the terms of the Transport Scotland contract, that risk is all with the contractor. In most cases, with other clients and other significant infrastructure jobs, risk is shared between contractor and client. There's an understanding of there's just some things that you just don't know. So it's hard to price something that you don't know. So the risk is shared. But not in the case of Transport Scotland contracts, which makes them commercially unattractive to contractors.
So if they're commercially unattractive to contractors, does that then perhaps give a little bit of the background as to why? Because we have heard a lot about Tamat and Tamoy, but we didn't get enough bids, and therefore it wasn't going to be value for money for the Scottish people. And the Scottish people are not going to be sort of held over a barrel by the civil engineering industry. That's effectively the other side of that coin, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly where we are. It is that in recent history, going back to lots of jobs in Central Belt, going back to the M8 bundle that's happened, Queensferry Crossing, Aberdeen Western Peripheral, Hoddigan Roundabout, the contractors there, the significant major contractors there, have all lost money.
How are they still in business?
Well, because they've luckily got other work that has managed to do that, but it caused significant strain and stress on some of these companies, and they've just said, actually, unless we have a fair chance of making a bit of money, and we're not looking to make a lot of money at 2% margins, but as long as we have a chance of making a bit of money, then until we've got that, we are not bidding for Transport Scotland work unless they change the risk profile that they put out in their contract.
How likely is that to happen?
Well, given the fact that in the last two jobs, they've only had one contractor on each job come forward, I would hope that common sense would say that they have to look at that and have seriously look at changing the contracts they use and go to a more industry norm contract. And that way, they will then get, I believe, more contractors coming back in, and then you have a competitive situation where Transport Scotland will then perhaps feel more confident that they're getting value for the taxpayer.
Thank you for that. So back in 2011, whenever it was that the dualling pledge was made, I think it was 2011, it was backed up with a £3 billion fund. Now, I know that construction inflation has been really high in recent years for very many reasons. Do you think that that would have been enough to get the job done? Had they had the plans and had they had the political will to follow it through, and they said they had the £3 billion, could we have had the job done by 2025 if everyone had been pushing for it, for that money?
It's difficult to say, but much more of it would have been dual than it currently is, and much of it would have been dualed at prices pre-COVID time and pre-Brexit time. So it's difficult to say as to whether, did that £3 billion ever exist, and was it always going to be ring fence for the A9, and would it have completed it? Because there is one section that hasn't got a route yet, so you don't actually know what that design might look like at this stage. But I think if there had been a process and a plan and a real desire to carry it through, then you would have been far nearer 3 billion than you are now. If you're looking to dual the A9 now, it's going to be a lot more than 3 billion, that's for certain.
So do you know then when it's going to be put out to tender again? I mean, is this the sort of thing we're waiting for an announcement from ministers for in the autumn?
Yes, the timetable that we're working to is that a minister announced that there would be an award by the end of this year. So they would award the contract by the end of the year. Now, Transport Scotland have been doing, and we've been involved with this, SEEKR's been involved with this, they have been going around trying to speak to contractors, not trying to speak, they have been speaking with contractors to understand their concerns around why they haven't bid in the past and what it would take for them to be interested again in bidding for work. So that process is not long finished. So I don't know what the outcome of that deliberation has been yet, but it's pretty challenging for them. Here we are sitting in the beginning of July, for them to go through a tender process and award within 5 months on a process that historically has taken them a year to do. So they think they can do the whole market engagement in 16 weeks. We'll see. But certainly they have put nothing out for tender yet.
Tomato and Tomoy aside then, it's chunked up into a remaining 8 sections, the rest of the single carriage weighted A9, if I can put it that way, very clumsily. 4 sections have made orders. Does that mean that they're pretty well where Tomato Tomoya is and ready to go out to tender?
That's exactly the case, yes.
But they haven't yet been put out?
Yeah.
3 sections, as I understand, are waiting for ministerial approval. Does that mean that if the minister looks at it and says, yes, that's fine, let's give it a thumbs up, those other 3 sections could then go out to tender?
There's a bit more involved with that, but I would say they are 80% there in terms of, you know, a further 20% of things to do once the minister says, yeah, go ahead with that.
Okay.
And then it could come out to tender, yes.
If you were in charge, Graham, what would you do?
There is a spending issue with the Scottish Government, and they have a very big project that they have made a commitment to the electorate that they will be done, and they're behind the 8 ball a bit on it. So they are going to have to spend money, and it's how they choose to do it. That's the thing. So the contracting industry is willing and able to deliver it on whatever method they choose to fund it. I think it's probably better for the Scottish economy if you have it in smaller chunks, either a framework or whatever, because if it's a big PFI, it won't be a Scottish company that does the PFI because there's nobody that big enough to do it. It's probably nobody in the UK is big enough to do it. So it's going to have to be European or further afield that comes in for a PFI type job. So really for a Scottish economy point of view, then a framework approach or a pay as you have the money approach would be the way to do it. But if you're living on the A9 and you're looking to get up and down there, the quickest way to do it would be to spend a whole lot of money quickly on it. There are contractors out there willing to do the work if the terms and conditions are fair and if there is real political will and money to back it up to do that project.
And that's a lovely way to end it. Graham Byrne, Sika Scotland, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us.